Hey guys, thanks for joining us again at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, we're really glad you joined us and hope you like what you hear. Our podcast is for people that want to learn something new or make themselves a little bit better every day. So, in our episode today, we're going to talk about the 5 main reasons, top reasons, at least we think most important reasons to consider why inaction haunts us more than failure or action, things we try that don't work. So there's been study after study after study by people who provide end-of-life care, palliative care, and on their deathbed, people regret not living the life they wanted to live. People regret not having relationships they wanted to have. They rarely regret the things that they did. And so that's why we're talking about this, is you don't want to get to the end of this thing and have those regrets. You want to be confident enough and believe in yourself enough to take your chances and experience opportunities when they're presented to you. So that's why we're talking about the topic today. Let's just jump into the show and we'll see what you think at the end here. So think back on your own life. Are your biggest regrets the times you tried something and failed? Or are they the things you never tried at all? The job you didn't apply for? The person you never asked out, the business idea you sat on. Research and decades of life experience show us that the deepest regrets usually come from inaction, not action. So in our episode today, we're going to break down the 5 best psychological reasons why that's true. Remember, on our show, we tend not to just give wild opinions without basing them on some type of facts or data or thought out argument, which is what we're doing today. So we're going to share real life examples and we're going to give you concrete tips to stop letting fear or anxiety rob you of opportunities or experiences. That's the show. That's the premise of it. Let's just jump into it. So let's start with a foundational insight from social psychology. In a landmark study, researchers Thomas Gilovich and Victoria Medevec found that in the short term, people regret actions more. But in the long term, they regret inactions more. So, recency bias absolutely plays a part in this. If you just did something and it just went wrong, yeah, it's going to sting, right? That's how it works. But if you fast forward down the road, it's actually the shots you didn't take that will haunt you. Why? Because the things we do and fail at tend to come with closure. We know what happened. It might sting, but we move on. But the things we don't do, those haunt us. We replay them in our minds over and over. What if I had taken that job? What if I had said yes to that opportunity? What if I had started that business? And here's the kicker. Our brains tend to idealize missed opportunities because our brains can fill in the blanks for us. Since they never happened, we can imagine them turning out perfectly. And that's not fair to ourselves, but that's how the brain works. So you have an infinite number of good outcomes that play over and over in your head versus I tried that, it failed, I know it happened, I've learned from it, I've moved on, it's in my past. So that's one of the main reasons why inaction haunts us much longer than things that we try that don't go the way we want them to go. Okay? So how do we solve that? What do we do about it? What tool can we use to prevent ourselves from falling into that trap? Well, one thing you could do is what Jeff Bezos did that he called regret minimization framework. And look, we're not Jeff Bezos fans, got it, but he's been extremely successful with Amazon. You can say what you want about the guy, but he took a shot and knocked it out of the park. So ask yourself, at age 80, will I regret not doing this? Like, ask yourself that question. Will I regret this at age 80? If you can say no, fine. But think about it. How many things will you actually really regret at age 80 that you did versus things you didn't do? We would bet that the answer is you'd regret the things you didn't do much, much more. It's a powerful way to cut through the fear of short-term failure and focus on long-term fulfillment. Ask yourself that question. At age 80, will I regret not doing this? It'll help you get over that inertia of taking action. Okay, step number 2. Or point number 2, sorry. Action builds identity. Inaction keeps you stuck. There's a psychological truth that's as old as time. We grow by doing. Erik Erikson, a pioneer in developmental psychology, emphasized that life satisfaction comes from exploration and commitment, from trying new things, forming relationships, starting projects, and taking risks. People who take action build a stronger identity. They say, I'm someone who tries. I'm someone who creates. I'm someone who lives. But inaction keeps you in limbo. You're always waiting for the right moment. You're always waiting for the right scenario. You're always waiting for the perfect set of circumstances. You become someone who hesitates, someone who wonders what might have been. So, how do we overcome this? How do we stop that from happening to us? Let's start calling ourselves and identifying ourselves as people of action. Even if it's small, take one action each day that moves you towards something that you care about. Say this to yourself: I take action even when I'm uncertain. I'd rather fail than regret doing nothing. Right? So repeat that mantra to yourself. I take action even when I'm uncertain. I'd rather fail than regret doing nothing. That's how we stop ourselves from worrying and talking ourselves out of things. Now, we're not saying devil may care attitude, do whatever you want, throw caution to the wind. We're saying we stop ourselves from a lot of things that there's no good reason to stop ourselves from, because we create these wild scenarios in our head that have a low likelihood of happening, and we miss out on a lot of opportunities in life because of that. That's what we're trying to help people overcome. Okay? So, point number 3, failure is specific. Missed chances are infinite. Here's a key insight from behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman. The human mind handles specific failure better than vague ambiguity. So, if you try something and it doesn't work, you can analyze what went wrong. You can learn. You can move on. But when you miss a chance, that road is never explored. Your mind creates 10 different versions of how it could have gone. This makes missed opportunities feel worse than failures. Failure says, I know how that ended. Inaction says, what if that was the one that changed everything? So you have this infinite set of circumstances that your mind will keep looping over and over in your head when you don't take action, because the outcome is uncertain because you didn't take your shot. If you try something and fail, you know what happened, you learn from it, you compartmentalize it, you move on, you grow. If you don't take action, that never happens, and you're stuck in that loop forever. So how do we handle this one? What's our tip to handle this particular issue in our mind? Reframe risk. That's how we do it. We reframe risk. Most actions have limited downside but unlimited learning. Inaction has unlimited downside and zero growth. So we need to start experiencing. Life isn't a single make or break moment. It's a series of low risk trials that teach who you are. That's what we want to do. We want to take our shots. We want to experience things in life. We want to grow. We want to try new things. We want to expand our circle. That's how we're going to be happy. That's how we're going to be fulfilled. That's how we're going to become better people. So we've got to start experimenting. We've got to take our shots. Okay? Now, here's reason number 4. Good old-fashioned anxiety. This one's crucial. Anxiety many times doesn't protect you. It traps you. Clinical psychology has shown again and again that avoidance is at the core of anxiety disorders. The more you avoid something that scares you, the more power it gains in your mind. And over time, this avoidance doesn't just make you anxious, it makes you regretful. If you think about stoicism, and like we don't preach stoicism, but we appreciate stoicism and we study stoicism, and we think there's a lot of value in many of the attributes and principles of stoicism, Marcus Aurelius says the obstacle is the way, which is exactly what we're saying here. The avoidance doesn't just make you anxious, it makes you regretful. The more you avoid something that scares you, the more power it gains in your mind. The only way to stop that from happening is to confront the obstacle. That's what Marcus Aurelius is trying to say. Dr. Stephen Hayes, creator of acceptance and commitment therapy, teaches that psychological flexibility, your ability to take action despite fear, is the cornerstone of mental health. So, How do we overcome that? What's the real world tip to deal with that particular issue in our mind? Next time you feel fear, ask, is this wrong or just uncomfortable? So if you're worried about getting in trouble because you're talking about lighting a building on fire, that's wrong. That's pretty straightforward, right? We get that one. But if you're just nervous, they might laugh at me. I might look stupid. I don't know who to talk to. I'm not sure how it works, and that makes me uncomfortable. If it's just uncomfortable, lean in and try it. Try the 10-second rule. When that fear hits, when that anxiety hits you, when you start to feel paralyzed and frozen and not sure if you can move forward, count to 10, take a hard swallow, and take some kind of action. Send the email, make the call, say yes to the opportunity. Let action interrupt the cycle of anxiety. That's by far the best path out of that loop, is to take action. If you're fans of The Matrix, there's a scene right at the beginning where what's her name, Trinity, does the jump through the buildings, and she's running from an agent. And when she lands on her back, turns around, has both her guns pointed at the window she just jumped through. And she says to herself, move, get up, because she's frozen. It's fear, it's anxiety. And she takes action and survives. I know it's a movie, I know it's stupid, but it's a really good microcosm of how you need to take action in real life. So that's one example you can use if it's helpful for you. Okay, now, what's reason number 5? Reason number 5 is most risks aren't actually that risky. We are hardwired to overestimate danger, especially social, financial, or professional risks. In reality, most of the things you're afraid of aren't fatal. They're temporary setbacks, slight embarrassments, or small financial losses. Nothing you can't recover from. According to Gerd Gigerenzer, I tried saying this person's name over and over again. Gigerenzers, it's in the notes. Gerd, we're going to go with Gerd. Research, humans are terrible at calculating real versus perceived risk. We're going to believe Gerd on this because with a name like that, he's got to be good at statistics, right? So that's our theory at least. But according to Gerd, people are terrible at calculating the real risk versus the perceived risk. We start treating a business like jumping off a cliff when it's more like taking a step off the curb. So how do we overcome this issue in our minds? We'll try this exercise. Write down the worst case scenario if something goes wrong. Then write down the probability of it happening. Finally, write down how you'd recover if it did. You'll usually find that the risk isn't that risky, and not taking the chance is the real danger. Start saying to yourself, the cost of inaction is higher than the cost of imperfection. Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's right-hand man for decades before he passed away a year ago, he got his start as basically a scheduler or manager of World War II pilots. And so he would send them out on their missions. He would manage their routes and kind of like an air traffic controller, but like a mission commander. And he said he used to start by saying, what are the things I could do that would get these guys killed to make them not come back? And then I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to avoid those things because I know they're bad. That opened up all other possibilities because he had avoided the worst case scenario to start with. That's all we're talking about here. Write it down. What is the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that could happen? And then what's the probability of that actually happening? It's like drowning. You drown in the ocean, of course. You could drown in a puddle in your driveway. That's true. Like you could. What is the possibility or the odds of drowning in a puddle in your driveway versus the probability of drowning in the ocean? Clearly much greater in the ocean. We apply that probability of drowning in the ocean to the puddles in our driveway too often in our real lives. And it's a crippling thing that stops us from doing things. So remember that phrase. The cost of inaction is many times higher than the cost of imperfection. Okay? All right, so let's just recap real quick the 5 big reasons people regret inaction more than they regret action. 1, time magnifies inaction regret. 2, action shapes your identity. Inaction leaves you stuck. 3, failure is specific. Missed chances are hauntingly open-ended. 4, anxiety leads to avoidance, which becomes regret. And 5, most risks you fear are far smaller than you think. So, you won't always succeed. Not at all what we're saying. Failure is a part of life. Life is going to kick you in the teeth multiple times. Welcome to the world. That's okay. You'll grow. You'll learn. You'll live. That's how it goes. With that said, don't let it stop you from experiencing new things in life and taking your shots. Start the project. Make the call. Book the trip. Launch the idea. Say what you need to say. Because regret doesn't come from failure. It comes from never trying. Okay, thanks for listening, guys. If you got value from this episode, share it with someone who's also on the fence about something big in their life. It might be the nudge they need. You might push them into action that changes their life. That could be a good thing. So that's the episode for today, guys. James puts it up over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All the podcast episodes are there. Links to all our social media accounts are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to there. And please comment, share, like, subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. Super helpful for us. This episode will air on a Tuesday. Hope your week got off to a good start yesterday. Hope the rest of your week goes well. And we will see you on the next episode.